I wasn't supposed to hear that message. It was meant for someone else. But once I played it, everything I ever believed about my family shattered in 10 seconds. My mother's voice, calm and cold, said, "She's signing the papers next week. She won't even realize we've taken everything." I froze. My husband laughed in the background. They had planned it all. My savings, my home, even my mind. They were ready to declare me insane. Have you ever trusted someone so deeply, only to realize they've been scripting your destruction? I disappeared that night, but I didn't run. I prepared. The phone lit up at 2:17 a.m., its harsh glow breaking through the darkness. My mother's name blinked on the screen like an alarm bell I'd long stopped questioning. I answered without hesitation. On the other end, her voice trembled between sobs. I can't take it anymore. Maybe I should just die and stop being a burden." I was fully awake now, heart racing, every nerve trained by years of guilt. "Don't say that, Mom. What happened?" My voice was calm, too calm, the kind of practiced concern that masked exhaustion. "It's Jacob," she said, referring to my younger brother. "He needs help, it's urgent, and I don't know who else to turn to. I thought family meant something to you." 10 minutes later, I sat at my kitchen table, transferring $15,000 to a joint account my mother shared with Jacob. No explanation needed, no questions asked, just like always. As the wire confirmation blinked on my laptop, I thought back to the first time I was taught the price of saying no. I was 10. I had just won a school art contest. My mother had smiled, kissed me on the forehead, then added, "You're such a good girl when you don't ask for anything back." At 12, I gave up my summer camp because Jacob had allergies. At 16, I skipped prom to babysit our cousins. At 24, I co-signed Jacob's first car loan. At 38, I was still transferring money in the dead of night to keep everyone afloat. My therapist once asked me, "Rachel, do you ever feel free in your own life?" I laughed, not because it was funny, because the idea was so foreign, it felt hypothetical. A ping broke through the silence. A text message from Brian, my husband, the man I thought had stopped caring long ago. "They're using you again. You know that, right?" I stared at his words. My hands froze mid-air above the laptop. I wanted to delete the message, pretend it hadn't arrived, but I didn't. I read it again. And again. Later that morning, after the sky had turned its indifferent blue, I sat across from my best friend Anna at a cafe neither of us had time for. She stirred her coffee absent-mindedly and said, "Rach, when was the last time you laughed? I mean really laughed. Not smiled, not chuckled, actually felt joy?" I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. I used to laugh all the time. I remembered laughing so hard in college that I snorted soda through my nose. I remembered laughing with Brian once, back when we were still in love, before my family became a third party in our marriage. But now, I couldn't recall the last time my laughter wasn't rehearsed. That night, I dug through a shoebox hidden in the back of my closet. Inside were letters I'd written over the years, not to anyone in particular, just to myself. Some were angry rants I never dared speak aloud. Others were apologies for having feelings at all. One letter, dated 6 years ago, began, "Dear me, please stop thinking. It only makes you weaker." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The saddest part wasn't what they did, it was how easily I let them. I was conditioned to believe that my love for them was measured by how much I could sacrifice, that every refusal was betrayal, that every boundary was a threat. I thought I was a strong woman, independent, accomplished. But the truth is, I had become the most obedient version of myself to earn love that was always conditional. No one had ever asked me, "Rachel, what do you want?" Not once, not even Brian. I stared at the mirror. My reflection was tired, hollow-eyed, the kind of woman who had learned to smile so no one would look closer. The kind of woman who hadn't cried in years because tears implied weakness, and weakness was always punished. That night, I didn't sleep. I reread every letter, every whisper I'd kept locked away. They weren't just memories, they were evidence. Proof that I had been disappearing for years. I picked up my phone, opened a blank note, and typed, "Things I will no longer tolerate." It was a short list, but it was a start. It started with a vibration, just one. I was folding laundry, mindlessly smoothing Brian's shirts, when my phone buzzed on the counter. One missed voice message. The contact said Mom, but there was something odd. The message had come in through a group thread I never used. Curious, I hit play. "We'll finalize everything next week. She won't even notice the transfer until it's done." That was my mother's voice, calm, crisp, controlled. "She'll sign whatever we put in front of her," came another voice. "Jacob," his tone casual, even amused. Then Brian's voice. "Don't forget the medical part. Once the papers are signed, we can start the psychiatric claim. I've already spoken to the doctor. She trusts me more than she trusts herself." I froze. My spine went ice cold. My husband, the man who once knelt and promised to protect me from the world, was the one orchestrating my erasure. Then came the worst part. My mother's voice again. "We'll tell her it's just for legal protection. Rachel always wants to feel like she's in control. Let her think that." The message cut off with a laugh. My thumb hovered over the screen. The recording was only 47 seconds long. I replayed it, again, as if some new version might emerge where they weren't who they were. But every time it was the same. They were plotting to steal everything. Not just my assets, but my agency, my sanity, my name. I felt something inside me fracture. Not a dramatic break, no tears, no screaming. Just a deep, soundless splintering, the kind that makes it hard to stand up straight. I ran to grab a charger. The battery was at 1%. I needed to send this to someone, anyone. Anna, a lawyer, a stranger on the internet. But before I could, the phone shut down. Dead. That silence felt louder than the betrayal. The next few days passed in a surreal blur. I went through the motions, work, groceries, meaningless conversations. But my mind stayed locked in that recording. I didn't confront anyone, not yet. I needed to know what came next, what else was planned. My instincts told me, let them believe I knew nothing. Then came Christmas, our annual gathering hosted at my parents' home. I arrived with a bottle of wine and a stomach full of dread. Everyone was already there. The fake laughter, the perfectly curated cheer, the usual performance. I caught Brian's eye across the room. He smiled. That same easy, practiced smile. He walked over, kissed my cheek like he hadn't plotted my institutionalization 3 days earlier. "You look beautiful," he said. "Red suits you." "Thanks," I replied, trying to keep my hands from shaking. I moved through the evening like a ghost, answering questions, laughing at jokes, watching everyone as if through glass. Did they all know? Were they all in on it? Then came the comment. One of the younger cousins, maybe 10, maybe 11, tugged on my sleeve as I refilled my drink. "Aunt Rachel, She asked with childlike innocence. Are you really going to the hospital? Grandma said you might, 'cause you're acting weird. I dropped the wine glass. It shattered at my feet, sharp and sudden. Everyone turned. My cheeks burned, but I smiled and muttered something about slippery hands. Inside, I was screaming. I escaped to the bathroom and locked the door. My breathing turned shallow. My reflections stared back at me, pale, furious, unraveling. They were already telling people, laying the groundwork. The narrative was shifting. I was becoming unstable, erratic, emotional. I splashed cold water on my face. You are not crazy. You are not crazy. Later, back home, I sat on the floor with my laptop open. I typed every detail I remembered from the voice message. Names, phrases, tone. I had nothing physical yet, but I had memory, and memory was a start. Out of habit, I opened a new tab and searched the name of my therapist. The one Brian had recommended 6 months ago. The one I'd been seeing every other Friday. There, in a forgotten corner of Facebook, was a photo. My therapist, smiling, arm in arm with Jacob. They'd gone to college together. I stared at the screen for a long time, pulse thudding in my ears. Every session, every confession, every fragile word I'd spoken, filtered through someone loyal to my brother. They had planned everything. I shut the laptop. I wasn't safe. I couldn't sleep. Again. The silence of the house felt heavier now, thick with betrayal, like every wall was listening in. I sat cross-legged on the floor, wrapped in an old hoodie, staring into the dim glow of my laptop screen. I didn't know what I was looking for, guidance, proof, anything, but I needed to feel less alone. Some impulse I didn't question led me to Reddit. I created a burner account, Family Ghost 38. In a private subreddit for legal abuse survivors, I typed a post under the title, "My family is trying to steal my life, literally." I detailed only what I could, avoiding names. I described the voice message, the therapist's connection to my brother, the strange hospital rumors, the cold smiles. Then I hit submit. It was almost 3 a.m. 15 minutes later, I got a DM. It read, "I know what they're doing. You're not crazy. They're prepping a psychiatric guardianship. They'll make you look unstable and take control of your assets. Has your husband ever asked you to sign anything without reading it?" My hands trembled over the keyboard. I replied instantly, "Yes, a few weeks ago. He said it was for taxes." The stranger replied, "Then check this." There was a link. My heart pounded. I clicked it. A shared Dropbox folder. Inside, a single file. Rachel Miller Psych Proxy.pdf. I opened it. It was a scanned document, an official petition for temporary guardianship due to mental instability. Applicant, Brian Taylor. Co-supporting petitioners, Linda Miller and Jacob Miller. There at the bottom was my signature. Only it wasn't mine. I sat motionless, staring at the digital betrayal. It was perfect. The signature was so close to mine, even I had to squint. I messaged back, "Who are you? Why are you helping me?" No reply. I waited an hour. Nothing. The stranger had gone dark. But it didn't matter. They had just handed me the match I needed to burn their plan down. I started with my bank, changed every password, froze the joint accounts Brian had insisted we keep for emergencies. Then I called my cell provider, changed my number, and had all my calls recorded under legal notice. I started recording everything, conversations, voicemails, even ambient sounds in my own home. Then I made a private folder on my cloud drive and labeled it. The Case. It became a shrine to my survival. Photos of text messages, a screenshot of the guardianship file, logs of therapy sessions, a list of strange behaviors from Brian in the past year, a chart of transfers from my accounts, how each gift to Jacob coincided with suspicious purchases made from a company he was supposedly bankrupt from. Each night, I added more, but I also knew I wasn't the only one. I found a closed Facebook group, Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers. I joined, scrolled, read, absorbed. One story caught my eye, a woman named Sarah, whose mother had tried to declare her unfit to access a trust fund left by her late father. She had fought back and won. I messaged her. She responded within a day. We scheduled a Zoom call. I wore a hoodie. She wore a quiet strength in her eyes. Sarah told me how she found a therapist outside her family's influence, how she documented every manipulation, and how she used legal tools like restraining orders and forensic accountants to build her case. You have to start thinking like them, she said, but smarter. Don't fight fire with fire. Fight it with facts. Then she paused. Rachel, you said your mother's name is Linda. Yes. A beat. Then, I think she tried to do this before, a long time ago, to her own sister. What? She's not in the group, but I recognize that name. My aunt was friends with a woman named Deborah. Linda Miller tried to put her sister in a facility back in the late 90s, but it didn't work. The sister disappeared. No one ever heard from her again. The air in the room turned cold. I didn't even know my mother had a sister. I ended the call and opened my old family photo albums. Nothing, no mention of an aunt, just mom, dad, and 2 smiling kids. That night, I typed one sentence into my growing case file. History is repeating itself, but not this time. The wedding was held at an upscale vineyard just outside the city, the kind of place where everything smelled like lavender and wealth. Jacob had spared no expense, though I couldn't help but wonder whose money funded the white roses lining the aisles and the live string quartet playing Vivaldi. I arrived alone, dressed in navy instead of the blush tones requested in the invitation, an act of quiet rebellion. No one greeted me. As I took my seat in the farthest row, the silence around me was louder than the music. My mother glanced back once, then looked away. My father never even turned. Brian was there, standing by the bar, whispering with Jacob, pretending not to see me. I watched them all, like specimens under glass. The very people who called me family had been willing to erase me for convenience. I had something they didn't know. Everything was ready. The ceremony began with the usual pomp. Vows, laughter, perfectly timed tears. I watched, unmoving. My heart wasn't beating faster. My hands didn't sweat. I had rehearsed this moment too many times to feel nervous. When the minister asked if anyone had objections, I didn't speak. That wasn't my moment. It came later. During the reception, after the first dance and the champagne toasts, the lights dimmed. A slideshow began to play, childhood photos of Jacob and his new bride, nostalgic music, laughter from the crowd. Then the screen flickered. Static, then silence, then my voice. Hi, my name is Rachel Miller. I'm Jacob's sister, and if you're watching this, it's because the people Tummo celebrating here today thought I wouldn't survive what they did. Gasps echoed through the hall. People turned, heads craned. The slideshow vanished. In its place, a screen recording played. Emails, documents, voice messages. Brian's voice, Jacob's, my mother's. Their plan laid bare. She won't even notice. Already spoke to the doctor. She signs whatever we put in front of her. then a scanned PDF of the forged signature, my name written in careful strokes I never made. The crowd fell into stunned silence. My hands, folded on my lap, didn't move. I didn't need to. I had done everything days ago, sent the file to the venue's AV team anonymously, requested they play it at the 11-minute mark of the slideshow. The USB drive had been clean, untraceable. Then came the voice. A woman rose from a table near the center, silver-haired, dressed in black, and sharper than anyone else in the room. "Well," she said, her voice calm, loud, and clear. Finally, someone had the guts to expose it. Murmurs spread. My mother's face drained of color. "Linda," the woman said, turning to my mother, "do you remember Deborah, your sister, or should I say, your first victim?" My mother's lips moved, but no sound came out. The woman sat down. No more words. She didn't need them. Her presence was enough. Someone else knew, someone had seen, and now everyone else had too. Then, like fire finding dry grass, chaos erupted. Jacob stood up and shouted, "This isn't true. This is fake." He knocked over a champagne glass. His new bride stepped back, visibly shaken. "You told me she signed it," she whispered to him. Brian vanished. No goodbye, no confrontation. I didn't even see him leave, only heard later that he left through the kitchen and never returned to the hotel that night. My mother clutched her chest and stumbled. My father rushed to catch her. Someone screamed. The DJ turned the music back on, like that could cover the noise, but the fire had already spread. I walked out quietly. No one stopped me. Outside, the vineyard air was cool. Stars blinked overhead. I found a bench near the parking lot and sat down, pulling a bottle of red wine from my bag. No glass, just the bottle. I drank slowly. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. The vindication, the drama, the fall of false idols. And yet, I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. "Why don't I feel happy?" I whispered, more to the night than to myself. Maybe because what I wanted wasn't revenge. It was something simpler, kinder. I wanted to be loved, protected, seen, and I had just proven that those things would never come from them. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. Unknown number. I answered. "This is Sarah Monroe," came a calm, clipped voice. "I represent the law firm of Hatch and Grant. We've just been informed that your family has filed an emergency defamation and privacy suit against you. We'll need to respond immediately." I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. Of course they had. "Send me the paperwork," I said. "I'm ready." I hung up and took another drink. The courthouse smelled like old paper and panic. I sat alone at the long wooden table, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, knuckles white. Across from me, my mother sat flanked by 2 attorneys in sleek suits, one of whom whispered instructions in her ear as if prepping a queen for battle. Her expression was serene, almost amused. If she felt any shame, she hid it with expert grace. They had filed the defamation suit within 48 hours of the wedding. The claim was clear. I had fabricated documents, forged signatures, and manipulated private recordings to publicly humiliate and ruin the reputation of my family. It was slander, they said. I was mentally unstable, they added. And yet, here I was, sober, coherent, and painfully clear. My lawyer, a soft-spoken woman named Jenna, had advised me not to react emotionally. "They'll use anything," she warned, "even your breathing pattern." The opposing attorney rose first. He presented a picture of me as vindictive, volatile, a woman scorned, obsessed with drama. She weaponized technology, he declared. She distorted private conversations, edited files, created false documents. I stared straight ahead. I didn't blink. Then it was our turn. Jenna methodically laid out our case. The digital forensics expert confirmed the authenticity of the audio files. A handwriting analyst testified that the guardianship signature was inconsistent with mine. A therapist, my new therapist, described patterns of prolonged psychological abuse consistent with familial gaslighting. Still, I felt the tide wasn't strong enough. Then the door at the back of the courtroom opened. A woman entered slowly, slightly hunched, wearing a beige coat and holding a thick file folder. Her hair was gray, tied back in a neat bun. I recognized her instantly. Mrs. Kelly. She had been our housekeeper when I was a teenager. Quiet, loyal, invisible. The kind of woman my mother never noticed unless something was wrong. I hadn't seen her in over 20 years. She was sworn in, and then she began. I worked for the Millers from 1998 to 2006, she said clearly. I saw things, heard things, I kept records. The judge raised an eyebrow. Records? Mrs. Kelly held up the folder. Signatures, conversations, notes I took when Rachel was told to sign documents she didn't understand. One in particular, from 2003, Linda asked Rachel to sign something at the kitchen table, said it was for college loans. But it wasn't. It was a power of attorney. Gasps whispered across the room. She placed the folder on the table. Inside were yellowed sheets of paper, annotated in faded ink, with copies of documents that bore my name but never my knowledge. My mother's attorney objected. He claimed it was hearsay, unreliable, but it was too late. The damage was done. Jenna cross-examined Mrs. Kelly with precision. Each page she turned revealed another inconsistency, another thread in the tapestry of control. I looked across the aisle. My mother's expression had changed. Gone was the smug composure. Her eyes darted, her lips pursed, her hands clenched tightly under the table. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't planned for a ghost from the past. By the end of the testimony, the courtroom felt like a cracked mirror. I didn't speak much during the trial. I didn't need to. My silence said more than any monologue ever could. On the final day, the judge looked over her glasses at both sides. The court finds in favor of the defendant, Rachel Miller. The claims of defamation and privacy invasion are dismissed with prejudice. Furthermore, given the overwhelming evidence of coercion, psychological manipulation, and forged legal documents, I am issuing a court order to sever financial entanglements between Ms. Miller and the plaintiffs, effective immediately. There was no applause, no music, no sudden catharsis, just the cold, official stamp of justice. Afterward, reporters waited outside the courthouse steps. I ignored them. Jenna offered to drive me home, but I declined. I needed space. That night, I lay on my roof, a blanket wrapped around me, staring at a sky that didn't care about lawsuits or bloodlines. Stars blinked above, distant and quiet. I had won, but I didn't feel victorious. I whispered into the night. I didn't want this. I just wanted them to love me. And for the first time in weeks, I cried, not out of anger or fear or relief, but because somewhere inside, a version of me was dying. The daughter who believed in unconditional love. The woman who still hoped they'd change. She was fading, and something else was being born. The woman in the mirror had a new name, legally, officially, and spiritually. Rachel Miller no longer existed, At least not in public records. Now she was Eva Carter, a name chosen not to forget the past, but to protect the future. It felt strange at first, signing emails, documents, and letters as someone new. But over time, Eva felt less like a costume and more like a reclamation. She moved to a small coastal town 2 states away, a quiet place where no one knew her face, her story, or her scars. She rented a modest apartment above a bookstore. The owner, a widowed woman named June, didn't ask questions. She just handed Eva the keys and said, "This place has good light in the mornings, perfect for new beginnings." Each morning, Eva sat by the window with her tea and wrote 5 things she was proud of. At first, they were small. I didn't answer his call. I slept through the night. I said no and didn't apologize. Over time, they grew bolder. I protected myself without guilt. I changed the story. I am free. She filled journals with these declarations, anchors that reminded her who she was becoming. By month 3, Eva began speaking with other women online. First through private forums, then scheduled calls. Most were strangers who had read fragments of her story online. Details leaked by journalists after the trial. Some were timid, ashamed. Others were enraged but lost. She listened. She guided. She never told them what to do, only reminded them that they deserved to decide. She didn't consider herself a therapist. She wasn't trying to be one. She was a survivor turned mirror, reflecting what others were too afraid to name. Eventually, someone asked if she would ever write it all down. At first, she refused. It felt too raw, too personal, too dangerous. But the truth had already been weaponized against her once. Maybe this time it could be a shield for someone else. So she began. 1 chapter at a time, 1 truth at a time. She called it The Family I Escaped From. Not a memoir, a manual, equal parts storytelling and strategy. A roadmap out of emotional captivity. It covered manipulation, legal tactics, financial safety nets, and emotional healing. She didn't name names. She didn't need to. The people who needed it would know. When the book launched, she expected silence. Instead, it exploded. Podcasts called. Reviewers raved. Messages poured in, some full of thanks, others full of pain. It became a lifeline for thousands, a spark, a scream, a beginning. At her first public signing event, held in the back of a small bookstore in Chicago, she wore black. No makeup, no stage lights, just a table, a pen, and her truth. Halfway through, a girl, couldn't have been older than 20, approached her, eyes wide, voice trembling. "I read your book 3 times, she whispered. "It saved me." Eva smiled softly. "Thank you." The girl hesitated, then leaned in. "My sister's being kept in our house. She's 18. Our mom won't let her leave. She took her phone, her ID. It's like a prison." Ava's breath caught. She nodded. "You're not alone." "I didn't know what to do," the girl said, voice cracking. "Then I read your story. I thought, maybe if someone like you could fight back, maybe she could too." Eva reached across the table and took her hand. "What's your name?" "Lena." "Well, Lena," she said, gripping gently, "you just became your sister's first ally. That's how it starts." Lena exhaled, a mix of fear and relief. Can I have your signature?" Eva opened the book, scribbled her name, then paused. She added 1 line beneath it. "You are not crazy. You are not alone." Lena clutched the book to her chest like armor. "Thank you." Eva nodded. "I'm here, and I'm not afraid anymore." As the girl walked away, Eva looked around the room, not at the people, but at what she had built. Not from revenge, not from rage, but from reclaiming. This wasn't the end. It was the first day of everything else.